The dining room glowed with warm light, candles flickering on the cake I had baked myself. Everyone leaned forward, waiting for my son to hand me my birthday gift. For a brief second, I felt like the years of sacrifice had been worth it. But instead, he stood up, cleared his throat, and with a wide smile, handed a crisp envelope to his wife's mother. She opened it, and gasps filled the room. Inside was a check for $100,000. Then he looked straight at me, his voice cut sharper than any knife. "You never gave me anything but struggle, Mom. Compared to her, you're just a loser." Laughter rippled across the table. My heart shattered, but I forced a smile. That was the night I vanished, and the beginning of my sweetest revenge. If you've ever been disrespected by the very people you sacrificed everything for, then this story is going to hit home. I was the mother who stayed up all night working 2 jobs, the mother who skipped meals so her child could eat, the mother who believed love and sacrifice would be remembered. And yet, on the one day meant to celebrate me, my own birthday, my son humiliated me in front of everyone. He handed his mother-in-law a $100,000 check, called me a loser, and laughed while I held back tears. But here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't break you, it transforms you. What followed was a kind of justice you don't see coming. So hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because what happened next is the definition of karma. My name doesn't carry weight in society. I'm not a CEO, not a woman who wears pearls or sits in country clubs. I'm a mother. A single mother who has worked her hands raw to raise her son after his father abandoned us when he was just 6 years old. Life was never easy. I gave up my own dreams of finishing college so I could put food on the table. By day, I cleaned offices. By night, I waited tables. My back ached, my feet burned, but I pushed forward because there was no other choice. My boy was my world. Every paycheck, every sleepless night, every calloused hand, it was all for him. I didn't buy myself new clothes, I didn't go on vacations, but I made sure he had what he needed. I skipped meals so he could have seconds. I worked overtime so he could play soccer without worrying about fees. I never told him how hard it was, I just wanted him to grow up knowing he was loved, even if it meant I had nothing left for myself. When he got into college, it was the proudest moment of my life. I cried in the parking lot the day we dropped him off. All those sacrifices, all those nights, I fell asleep at the kitchen table over bills. It was worth it. I thought, one day, he'll understand what I gave up so he could stand tall. But as the years passed, something changed. My son found success. He built a career, married a woman from a wealthy family, and suddenly, the life I had worked so hard to give him became something he wanted to forget. His new in-laws were everything I wasn't. They had money, class, a way of carrying themselves that made me feel small the moment I stepped into a room. His mother-in-law in particular, polished, elegant, dripping in diamonds. She never had to scrub floors or worry about unpaid bills. The first time we met, she smiled sweetly, but her eyes held judgment. Later, she leaned toward me and whispered, "Not everyone is meant to succeed, dear. Don't feel bad." I laughed it off, but inside, it stung. Still, I believed my son would never forget me. I believed deep down he would remember who was there when no one else was. So when my birthday rolled around and he promised a special dinner, I let myself hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I would finally feel the respect and love I had spent a lifetime giving him. But what I got instead was betrayal so sharp, it nearly broke me. Engagement line. Would you forgive your child if they chose money and appearances over you? The dinner table was set like something out of a magazine. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, expensive dishes lined the table, and the chatter of guests buzzed like background music. I sat quietly at the end of the table, proud just to be there, my heart swelling with a little hope. It was my birthday. For once, I thought maybe the spotlight would turn to me. Maybe my son would say a few kind words, remind everyone who had carried him through the darkest years of his childhood. Then he stood up, glass in hand, a confident smile across his face. "I want to take a moment to honor the most important woman in my life," he announced. My heart leapt. I thought he meant me, but his eyes weren't on me. They were locked on his wife's mother. The room hushed. He walked over and handed her a white envelope. She opened it slowly, her red nails slicing through the paper, and gasps filled the room. Inside was a check. $100,000. "For everything you've done for us," my son said proudly. "For your wisdom, your support, your generosity. I could never repay you enough, but this is just a small token." Applause erupted around the table. His mother-in-law dabbed her eyes with a napkin, pretending to be touched, though her smirk told a different story. And then my son turned back to the crowd. His eyes brushed over me almost dismissively before he added with a laugh, "Unlike some people, she's actually helped me succeed. My mom, well, she only gave me struggle. No offense, Mom, but let's be honest, you've always been kind of a loser." Laughter rippled through the guests. Some chuckled nervously, others smirked outright, and the woman holding the check leaned closer to me with a syrupy smile. "Don't take it too hard, dear," she whispered loud enough for others to hear. "Some mothers just aren't cut out for success." My throat tightened, but I forced a smile. I didn't let a tear fall. I simply thanked everyone for coming, blew out my candles, and sat silently while the celebration moved on without me. No one stood up for me. Not one person reminded my son of the sacrifices I made. The silence was deafening. In the days that followed, I thought maybe he'd call. Maybe he'd apologize, realizing how deeply he had cut me. But the phone never rang. When I tried to reach out, he avoided me. His wife answered coldly, telling me they were busy. Worse, his mother-in-law made sure her words stung whenever she saw me. "You should be proud," she said one afternoon, twirling her diamond bracelet. "After all, raising him brought him into our family. That's your accomplishment. Beyond that, well, you're irrelevant now." Her words hit harder than a fist. That's when I realized I hadn't just been insulted, I had been erased. The boy I raised, the man I sacrificed for, had chosen appearances and wealth over the very person who gave him life. And as much as it shattered me, it also lit something deep inside. Because I wasn't irrelevant, not yet. Engagement line: what would you do if your child humiliated you in front of the world you built for them? That night, after the party was over and the dishes were cleared, I sat alone at my kitchen table. The cake I had baked for myself sat untouched, frosting melting under the dim kitchen light. My son's laughter still echoed in my ears, mingling with the sound of clinking glasses and whispered insults. I stared at my calloused hands. These hands had raised him, fed him, clothed him, pushed him through every storm. And now, to him, they were just the hands of a loser. I took a long, deep breath and said it out loud. "Fine. If I'm such a loser, I'll vanish." And I meant it. The next day, I stopped calling. I stopped showing up to family events. I didn't chase him, didn't beg for attention, didn't explain myself to people who had already decided I was beneath them. I simply disappeared from his world. What my son never knew was that I wasn't as poor as I looked. Years ago, before my parents passed, they had left me a small piece of land and a modest sum of money. I'd never touched it, thinking one day I'd give it to him. But that night changed everything. I began quietly meeting with a lawyer. I sold a small plot of the land, invested the proceeds, and started refurbishing an old farmhouse I'd inherited. I poured every ounce of pain into planning a life he would never see coming. No more begging for scraps of respect. No more hoping for recognition. I wasn't angry anymore. I was determined, and when the day came, he would learn exactly what a loser could build in silence. When I disappeared, I did so without fanfare. No goodbye letters, no dramatic exits. I simply faded from their world, quietly carrying my broken heart and a brand new resolve. I moved into the old farmhouse my parents had left me. For years, it had sat abandoned, paint peeling, roof sagging, the kind of place people passed by without a second glance. But I saw something in it, not just a house, but a second chance. Piece by piece, I brought it back to life. I used the money from selling a small plot of land to hire workers for the heavy repairs, but most of the labor was mine. I sanded floors until my hands blistered, painted walls until my arms ached, and planted flowers along the porch until color bloomed where there had once been only dust. What began as a farmhouse slowly transformed into a boutique inn. Travelers started booking weekend stays. Word spread. Guests loved the charm, the personal touch, the warmth I poured into every detail. Within 2 years, the inn was flourishing. By the third, I expanded into rental cottages on the property. My quiet little escape became one of the most sought-after stays in the region. Money was no longer a struggle. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. And I did it all without calling my son once. Meanwhile, his world began to crack. I heard whispers through the grapevine. His flashy investments had gone sour. The companies he boasted about collapsed, and the in-laws who once flaunted their wealth weren't as untouchable as they appeared. Their debts grew. Their smiles faded. And then, one rainy afternoon, it happened. A knock on my inn's polished wooden door. I opened it, and there he was, my son. Older now, stress lines etched across his once proud face. His expensive suit looked worn, his tie loose, his eyes desperate. "Mom," his voice broke, I need your help." I stood there in the doorway, dressed in the simple but elegant clothes I now wore as the owner of a thriving business. Behind me, guests laughed in the parlor. The smell of fresh-baked bread filled the air, and the inn I built stood proudly, proof of the life I'd carved without him. For the first time, it was he who looked small. "Funny," I said softly. "I thought I was just a loser." He swallowed hard, his eyes darting around at the evidence of my success. "Please, Mom. Things didn't go the way I thought. I let him speak, but inside, my heart was calm. I had imagined this moment for years, and here it was. Engagement line. Are you ready for the moment he realized the loser mom he mocked was the one person who could save him? He stepped into the lobby of my inn, his shoes dripping rainwater onto the polished wooden floor. His eyes darted around, at the antique chandeliers, the fresh flowers, the paintings that lined the walls. Every inch of the place screamed success, the kind of success he once believed I would never touch. "Mom," he stammered, his voice cracking. How did you—" I met his eyes, calm as the storm raged outside. "I was a loser, remember?" I said quietly. "But losers don't stay down forever." His jaw tightened. He looked at the guests laughing in the dining hall, at the staff bustling with trays, at the life I had built stone by stone. The reality sank in. The mother he had mocked, the woman he had erased, had risen higher than he ever imagined. "I need your help," he whispered finally. "Please. Just a little money, to get back on my feet." I studied him, but my heart no longer ached. It was steady, clear. "I built this life without you," I said softly. "And I'll continue it without you. You made your choice when you called me a loser. Now live with it." His face flushed red, humiliation burning across his skin. For once, there were no laughs, no applause, no mother-in-law to smirk at my expense. Just silence. The silence of a man realizing he had thrown away the only person who truly cared. And I turned, leaving him standing there, small against the world he had mocked me for building. When he walked out of my inn that day, shoulders slumped, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. What I felt was peace. For years, I thought success was measured in paychecks, in status, in the way others looked at you. But standing there, watching my son realize the truth, I finally understood. Real success is measured in resilience. It's in the strength to rise when the world pushes you down. It's in the dignity of building quietly, without needing applause, without needing anyone's approval. I had spent decades sacrificing, hoping for gratitude, and while I never received it from him, I found something greater: pride in myself. The life I built wasn't about revenge alone. It was proof that no insult, no betrayal can define who you are unless you let it. And as for my son, life has a way of teaching lessons no lecture ever could. You can mock, you can forget, you can betray, but karma will always find its way home. Because in the end, the person you call a loser may be the one writing the story of your downfall. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and subscribe for more. I want to hear from you. What's the harshest lesson in respect you've ever seen someone learn? Was it in your own family, at work, or in your community? Share it in the comments, because your story might inspire someone else who's walking through the same storm. And remember, respect is not owed to the loudest or the wealthiest. It belongs to those who sacrifice, who endure, and who rise again when no one is watching. Don't forget, we've got more stories like this every single week. Stories of betrayal, justice, and the kind of revenge that makes you believe in karma again. So stay tuned, stay strong, and stay subscribed. Because sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well.